The origins of the Officio Assassinorum trace back to the earliest centuries following the end of the Horus Heresy, a time when the newborn Imperium of Man had been crippled by treachery and war. The High Lords of Terra, newly formed and still consolidating power, recognised that brute military force alone could not ensure stability. The rise of planetary governors with ambitions, rogue psychers, heretical cults, and alien infiltrators required another solution. One silent, precise, and final. Thus was born the Officio Assassinorum, a clandestine agency sanctioned by the Senatorum Imperialis to eliminate threats too delicate for open warfare and too dangerous to ignore. Though the Officio's precise founding date is debated, official documentation marks its institutionalization around the beginning of the 32nd millennium. While covert eliminations likely occurred prior to this, the formal designation and bureaucratic structure took shape only after the heresy's aftermath forced the Imperium to harden its internal defences. The earliest operatives were handpicked by select High Lords and trained in secretive temple cloisters scattered across Terra. These proto-assassins displayed unparalleled loyalty, physical perfection, and a near-fanatical dedication to silence and precision. An operative of the Officio Assassinorum is not born but constructed, physically, mentally, and spiritually. Recruits are drawn from across the Imperium's wide reach. Some are discovered as orphans raised in Chola progeniums. Others are forcibly conscripted from death worlds or hive cities after displaying unnatural reflexes or cold-blooded violence in the face of survival. Many are identified by the Adeptus Astra Telepathica or even inquisitorial scouts. Each candidate undergoes an invasive vetting process, often accompanied by extreme psychological trials to determine their malleability, obedience, and capacity for surgical violence. The physical transformation is equally invasive. All assassins are enhanced far beyond baseline human capabilities through a mixture of rigorous training, extensive cybernetic implantation, controlled neurochemical conditioning, and in some cases, radical biological modification. A typical operative will possess reaction times rivaling servitors, musculature capable of silent lethal strikes, and an immune system reinforced to resist most toxins, diseases, or mind-altering agents. Their bodies are streamlined for endurance, strength, and stealth, ensuring optimal performance under even the most extreme conditions. Though the Assassinorum is a singular institution, it is subdivided into numerous specialized temples, each dedicated to a unique philosophy of killing. These temples include the Vindicare, which specializes in long-range elimination through sniper execution, the Eversor, which unleashes chemically induced berserkers who annihilate targets with overwhelming force, the Callidus, whose polymorphine-enhanced agents infiltrate under false identities, and the Culexus, whose anti-psyker nulls devastate enemies of the warp. Other lesser-known temples are rumoured to exist, but remain unverified even by high-level Imperial agents. The existence of rarer sects like the Venenium or Vanus is known only to those with significant clearance. Each temple maintains complete autonomy in training, culture, and internal discipline. Temples are hidden across the Sol system and possibly beyond, accessible only to those with the highest security authorization. Their existence is deliberately kept secret even within the Adeptus Terra. Internally, temple structure is rigid, hierarchical, and ritualistic. The governing bodies of each temple include masters, proctors, and genitors, who oversee genetic engineering, indoctrination, and combat readiness. The trainees, often referred to only by numeric designations, live under total surveillance and are stripped of individuality until moulded into weapons of singular intent. Despite their diversity, all temples share common values: absolute loyalty to Terra, unquestioning obedience to mission orders, and total emotional suppression. Emotional attachments are considered liabilities and are actively erased during conditioning. Assassins are not permitted personal identity, social bonds, or ideological beliefs beyond their loyalty to the Imperium. They exist only to fulfill directives with unerring precision. Operationally, the Officio Assassinorum is not self-governing. It is administratively overseen by a Lord Executor and indirectly managed by the Senatorum Imperialis. However, requests for assassinations must be authorized through a rigorous chain of approvals. While any branch of the Imperium may submit a petition, including the Adeptus Astartes, Inquisition, or Adeptus Mechanicus, only the High Lords of Terra may sanction a kill order. This ensures that the power to deploy an assassin is not abused, although evidence suggests that politically influential bodies have sometimes manipulated this process. Each mission is termed an excision, and may take weeks, months, or even years to plan depending on the target's importance, defences, and affiliations. Assassins are deployed only when the target is deemed irreplaceable, or the act of public execution would serve a greater purpose, such as demoralising rebellion or sending a silent message to planetary governors. In these cases, the assassination is not merely tactical, but symbolic. The logistics behind an excision are intricate and compartmentalized. Once authorized, a kill order is transmitted through encrypted data channels using ancient mechanized protocols understood only by the Officio's data scribes. The appropriate temple is contacted and a specialist is selected. Transportation is then arranged using unmarked vessels, often supported by inquisitorial cover or Mechanicus stealth systems. Assassins are deployed covertly and withdrawn in silence, leaving minimal trace. Though rarely discussed, the technology utilized by the Officio Assassinorum is among the most advanced and occult in the Imperium. Vindicare operatives wield rifles such as the Exitus, capable of penetrating heavy armor or psychically reinforced barriers. Callidus agents employ polymorphine compounds that can reshape bone, muscle, and vocal cords, enabling flawless impersonation. Eversor assassins are equipped with bio-reinforced carapace, toxin dispensers, and internal stasis capsules to delay cellular decay. Culexus operatives wear the rare and terrifying Animus Speculum, a psychic null-field projector weaponized against psykers and demons alike. The development and maintenance of this technology are handled in secretive collaboration with select members of the Adeptus Mechanicus. These tech priests, often assigned exclusively to the Assassinorum, operate in isolation from Mars' more orthodox factions. The arcane nature of polymorphine synthesis, neural dissonance fields, and gene tailoring techniques is so advanced that even Magi Dominus treat it with superstitious reverence. Research within the Assassinorum temple laboratories often skirts the boundaries of Imperial legality, pushing into forbidden biological manipulation and AI-assisted targeting systems. Behaviourally, assassins are not homicidal maniacs. Their minds are cold, ordered, and functional. Conditioned to suppress pain, emotion, and hesitation, they operate in complete silence unless required otherwise. A Vindicare might remain in a concealed perch for 10 days without food or movement, waiting for a single kill shot. An Eversor may descend into a chemically induced frenzy, only to be reduced to a corpse by auto-immolation if captured. Their actions are precise, not impulsive, guided by training rather than instinct. Despite their role, assassins are not above scrutiny. Numerous incidents across Imperial history have raised questions regarding failed missions, accidental collateral, or the occasional refusal to terminate a target due to unforeseen moral conflict. These occurrences are rare and typically result in the immediate termination or reconditioning of the operative. However, the possibility of psychological instability remains a known risk, particularly among Eversor agents whose cerebral structure is heavily modified. The Officio Assassinorum maintains a careful balance between secrecy and strategic influence. Its operations are rarely acknowledged and almost never publicly recorded. Even within the Inquisition, knowledge of specific excisions is limited to Ordo-level clearance. When assassins appear in historical records, it is typically in moments of extreme importance, such as the death of Cardinal Baccharis during the Age of Apostasy, or the quiet removal of War Master Parian following his failed secessionist movement. Over the millennia, several key figures have emerged within the Officio's internal history. One such figure was Kylo, a Vindicare legend credited with executing 7 high-level traitors across 7 continents in a single Terran day during the Second War of Unity. Another was Eversec 117, an Eversor who single-handedly neutralized an entire Genestealer cult on Gorgonid Hive. The Callidus operative, known only as Selena, infiltrated a Tau diplomatic enclave disguised as a watercast envoy, assassinating 2 ethereals and vanishing without trace. Their identities, like their missions, are scrubbed from official records, but whispers endure in the hidden layers of the Administratum's secure archives. Even with their skill and lethality, assassins are not immortals. Most die on the field. Their deaths are rarely honoured publicly, though some are cremated within the black crypts of their temples, their ashes added to ritual urns used in the initiation rites of future generations. Their legacy is not measured in medals or monuments, but in the preservation of the Imperium through unseen acts of violence. The cultural philosophy of the Officio Assassinorum can be described as absolutist, deterministic, and devoid of personal agency. The operatives are not intended to reflect or question. They exist to carry out the will of the Imperium. Their entire lives, from the moment of recruitment to the moment of their death, are orchestrated by systems designed to remove choice and enforce purpose. It is not a brotherhood or a family. It is a weapon that thinks only enough to know where to strike. While many within the Imperium regard assassins with superstition or fear, others view them as necessary instruments, silent guardians that prevent the collapse of fragile order. They are not celebrated, but they are indispensable. Their very presence in Imperial doctrine reminds the galaxy that disobedience, heresy, and treason do not always meet open battle. Sometimes they simply stop breathing. Despite the rigidity and silence that defines the Officio Assassinorum, the internal cultures of each temple differ radically in philosophy, ritual practice, and psychological grooming. These differences are not surface-level variations but deep ideological rifts built into each temple's foundation. The Vindicare temple, for instance, holds patience and focus as its core virtues. Recruits are taught to empty themselves of all desire, reducing their thoughts to a single vector, the shot. Their instructors use mantras, visual deprivation, auditory isolation, and long-term stillness conditioning to build an unshakable mental focus. The final stages of their training involve months of motionless surveillance, often in extreme climates or void-bound platforms where failure to maintain sight of a simulated target results in termination. By contrast, the Callidus Temple functions as an environment of uncertainty, adaptation, and deception. From the earliest days of training, agents are taught that identity is fluid and trust is a liability. The polymorphine compound central to their craft alters not just the flesh, but the self-perception of the assassin. Trainers deliberately gaslight recruits, fabricate relationships, and engineer betrayals during training to crush the concept of emotional constancy. Operatives must function as diplomats, actors, and killers. Their psychological tests are non-linear and existential, designed to create a mind that can think like an enemy while remaining loyal to the Imperium's objective. Eversor operatives receive no such nuance. Their training is a slow demolition of the individual and a reconstruction of a living weapon. The process begins with combat conditioning under pain-suppressing drugs and gradually advances to neurochemical re-engineering. Most Eversor assassins are chemically dependent by design. Their bloodstreams are modified to carry a blend of aggression amplifiers, metabolic accelerants, and biostimulants that would kill a normal human within minutes. Their final stage of deployment includes a self-destruct mechanism triggered upon incapacitation or detainment. Trainers in the Eversor Temple are not educators in the traditional sense, but chemical engineers, pain therapists, and post-human behavioral architects. The most enigmatic of the temples is the Culexus. Due to the scarcity of individuals born as blanks, those devoid of a presence in the warp, the Culexus Temple must conduct its training with extreme caution. Blanks are both psychologically and socially alienated from birth, often developing without emotional reciprocity or normal human bonding. While this isolation is useful for anti-psycho warfare, it makes them difficult to condition. Training involves intense psychic stress exposure, daily interaction with imprisoned psychers, and frequent mental re-evaluation to ensure the assassin does not descend into catatonia or erratic behaviour. Culexus assassins must be trained not to feel, but also not to break. Each temple has its own sacred architecture, cloaked in secrecy, and often buried beneath mountain ranges, ocean floors, or void stations orbiting dead worlds. These temples are not merely training facilities but sanctuaries of doctrine. The Vindicare temple's chambers are composed of sound-dampened corridors and endless shooting ranges with simulated target scenarios. The Callidus temple resembles a labyrinth of shifting walls and false doors, where no trainee is ever certain what is real. The Eversor temple echoes with the cries of chemically broken aspirants, where every corridor ends in medical containment. The Culexus temple is near silent, its walls inscribed with nullfield runes, and psychers are kept in lead-lined vaults for training purposes. Recruits who survive their temple's trials eventually undergo what is known as the Ascension Protocol. This final rite varies across each temple. For the Vindicare, it involves completing a series of simulated executions in complete sensory deprivation. For the Callidus, it requires infiltrating a secure Imperial facility and assassinating a fabricated target without alerting a single system. Eversor initiates are subjected to their own biotoxins to determine survival threshold. The Culexus must extinguish a powerful psyker under the observation of an inquisitorial observer. Only those who complete this final test are deemed active operatives. Others are either recycled into training support roles or terminated to preserve secrecy. The psychological architecture of an assassin is artificial by design. Their minds are constructed using layers of conditioning, memory suppression, and cognitive refactoring. They are taught to segment their consciousness into operational states: active, standby, and kill state, each accessible through trigger phrases or chemical cues. This enables them to function in high-risk environments without compromising the mission through emotional reaction or autonomous thought. Emotional states such as fear, guilt, or even pride are identified and surgically erased during mental scans. The Officio maintains a dedicated branch of neural auditors tasked with evaluating each operative's psyche between missions. Failure to meet cognitive purity standards results in temporary deactivation, or grey room cleansing, a euphemism for psychological erasure. One of the most closely guarded assets of the Officio Assassinorum is its archive of mission data, kill protocols, and operational variants. These records are stored in cryptic cipher vaults housed within the Officio Centralis, an unmarked facility said to exist somewhere within the Himalayan mountains on Terra. The vaults themselves are maintained by cognitive servitors whose neural patterns are overwritten every few days to prevent pattern recognition. The mission logs are not just records of past executions but templates for future scenarios. Artificial simulations using past data are frequently run to test for new strategies, enemy evolutions, and internal doctrinal weaknesses. Some simulation data is passed to the Inquisition for cross-referencing threat emergence patterns. The technological infrastructure supporting each temple includes gear, implants, transportation, and medical facilities so advanced they are nearly post-human. Vindicare operatives are equipped with ocular implants capable of atmospheric and biometric analysis. Their sniper rifles feature adaptive scopes, grav stabilizers, and variable velocity rounds that can alter speed and impact on mid-flight recalibration. Callidus agents are given subdermal polymorphic arrays that allow for temporary biological changes including voice modulation and retinal pigmentation. Eversor assassins are integrated with spinal chemical delivery systems and reinforced skeletal architecture to withstand explosive concussions. Culexus agents rely on warp nullifiers embedded into the spine and augmented with psi-absorption nodes that can amplify or redirect psychic feedback. Transportation of assassins between missions is a logistical web of clearance codes, inquisitorial overrides, and mechanicus collaboration. Operatives are transported in stasis caskets or life support containers on black ships, often accompanied by false cargo manifests. The presence of a single assassin aboard a vessel is considered a high-tier security matter. Any deviation in trajectory or schedule triggers a full kill code protocol. wiping onboard data and sterilizing compartments. Upon arrival, operatives are awakened by mission servitors, briefed by encrypted neural relay, and deployed on foot by drop pod or through civilian infiltration. Return procedures involve similar containment, often with mission data embedded into neural implants and extracted upon re-entry into Imperial territory. While the Adeptus Mechanicus assists in technological support, they are intentionally excluded from operational doctrine. This compartmentalization ensures that no single branch of the Imperium gains too much understanding of the Officio's capabilities. The Mechanicus may repair a Vindicare's Exitus rifle, but they will never learn the firing patterns used in live missions. Similarly, they may assist in maintaining a Callidus's polymorphine biomatrix, but are denied access to infiltration algorithms. This secrecy is mutual. Even the tech priests understand that their alliance with the Assassinorum exists only on a functional level. The two organizations respect each other, but never trust. The internal caste system within each temple is similarly structured but adapted to its purpose. All temples feature three main castes: trainees, instructors, and ascendants. Trainees are in constant evaluation and live under strict isolation protocols. Instructors are former operatives who aged out of active deployment or were deemed psychologically unstable for fieldwork. These individuals are rarely permitted to leave the temple. Ascendants are elite operatives who have survived more than 10 successful excisions and are occasionally granted temporary field command or offered strategic roles within the Officio's broader structure. No operative retires. Those who can no longer serve are either reassigned to low-clearance internal duties or euthanized to protect security. The rituals of the Assassinorum are entirely practical and symbolic only insofar as they reinforce function. Vindicare initiates light a single black candle after each confirmed kill and record it into their personal kill ritual logbook, which is then archived post-mortem. Callidus agents conduct a ceremonial face cleansing before infiltration, symbolically washing away all previous identity. Eversor operatives are injected with a controlled microdose of their own kill serum before each mission as a reminder of what they are. Culexus agents undergo a brief ritual silence before departure, not to honour the Emperor, but to reaffirm their anti-presence in the warp. Philosophically, the Officio Assassinorum adheres to a deterministic worldview. It does not concern itself with morality, legality, or ethical variance. The target is either a threat to Imperial stability, or it is not. Questions of innocence, collateral, or redemption are irrelevant once an excision is authorized. Operatives are instructed to trust only the chain of command, and to never analyze the broader implications of their actions. This philosophical rigidity ensures consistency but also creates a certain vulnerability. If an operative begins to question purpose, the structure collapses. The presence of the Officio Assassinorum on a battlefield, or even in a planetary system, is a silent psychological weapon. The fear of being watched, infiltrated, or silently executed keeps many planetary governors and military commanders in line. It is said that the mere knowledge of an assassination order being filed is enough to cause some Imperial officials to reverse heretical actions, disband cults, or turn themselves in for judgment. This fear is not manufactured, it is earned. Over the course of 10,000 years, certain assassins have emerged as legends within the sealed records of the Officio Assassinorum. These individuals are never publicly acknowledged, their identities known only to the highest-ranking masters within their respective temples. They are remembered not through medals or ceremony, but through the perfection of their executions and the impact those missions had on the Imperium at large. One of the most enduring figures in the Vindicare Temple was Shadow Alpha 9. Though not their true designation, this name became a whispered moniker among internal archivists. This assassin was responsible for the elimination of the heretic warlord Haldric Morvan, who had seized control of the mining moon Caldrus 8 during Millennia 36. After multiple Astra Militarum regiments failed to dislodge the rebellion, Alpha 9 was deployed. The operative spent 8 days in position within the shell of a collapsed mining derrick, waiting for Morvan to appear at a known rally point. The single shot that followed ended the rebellion in a fraction of a second. No mass execution, no planetary bombardment, only silence. Equally infamous is the Callidus assassin known internally as Subject Selenia. During Millennia 38, Selenia infiltrated a conclave of traitor governors operating under the false flag of Imperial loyalty. Over the course of 3 years, Selenia posed as the daughter of one of the governors, manipulating key individuals, feeding false hope to rebel cells, and gaining access to secret documents. The mission culminated in a coordinated series of poisonings during a closed summit. 9 targets perished in a span of 30 minutes. The true identity of the killer was never discovered by the local population. To the Imperium, the rebellion had simply collapsed under internal stress. Among the most violent known actions by an Eversor assassin was the incident codenamed Helix Furnace, occurring in Millennia 41, year 168. The hive city of Parnaxis was overrun with cult activity tied to both Genestealer infiltrators and chaos-worshipping insurgents. The Astra Militarum had declared the region lost. Instead of orbital cleansing, an Eversor was deployed. The assassin entered through the lower underhive and triggered a controlled biochemical detonation at a known cult congregation site, followed by a 72-hour rampage through the district's leadership zones. The operation resulted in over 1,000 confirmed kills, including mutant overlords and rogue psychers. All casualties were recorded as enemies of the Imperium. Culexus assassins rarely gain recognition, even internally, due to their nature as psychic nulls and the intense secrecy that surrounds their deployment. However, one record titled Echo Obsidian details a single Culexus assassin neutralizing a warpsmith of the Iron Warriors during a classified operation on Carthan Delta. The warpsmith had begun constructing a warp relay gate using enslaved psychers and demon-bound technology. Upon deployment, the Culexus agent triggered massive psychic destabilization in the region. Reports from inquisitorial agents described a vacuum of presence, where the operative walked, psychers screamed into unconsciousness, servo-constructs malfunctioned, and the warpsmith collapsed mid-chant, blood leaking from every orifice. The gate never activated. Not all assassins succeed. Failure within the Officio Assassinorum is rare but not unknown. The temple records do not erase these instances but encode them within restricted databanks to study flaws and vulnerabilities. In some cases, missions are aborted due to target relocation, misidentification, or unexpected psychic interference. When this happens, the operative is not punished immediately. Instead, a tribunal composed of temple masters reviews the mission telemetry, psychological status, and environmental data. If fault lies in the operative's judgment, the penalty may range from retraining to termination. If fault lies in intelligence failure, the data chain is purged and restructured. There have also been recorded instances of assassins refusing orders during the final moments of execution. Though almost always the result of faulty psychological conditioning or an unforeseen emotional trigger, these cases are treated with the utmost gravity. In one archived incident titled Null Directive, a Vindicare assassin was deployed to eliminate an ecclesiarch accused of heretical interpretation of the Lectitio Divinitatus. Upon visual confirmation, the assassin hesitated, recognizing the target as their former Shola Progenium instructor. The hesitation lasted under 2 seconds, yet the operative was recalled, decommissioned, and permanently placed under containment within temple confines. The ecclesiarch was later executed by another means. The original assassin's failure was used as a cautionary conditioning case for decades thereafter. Beneath the standard operative level, there exists a rarely acknowledged inner caste within the Officio Assassinorum referred to in archived notes as the Obscura Division. These individuals are not standard temple-trained assassins, but are instead hybrids, part assassin, part analyst, and part data agent. They are used in highly sensitive operations involving political destabilization, strategic misinformation, or internal purges within the Imperium itself. The existence of the Obscura Division is denied by all temple masters, but several inquisitorial transcripts reference their involvement during the aftermath of the Nova Terra interregnum. No physical records of their training or deployment exist, and no known survivor has ever testified to their role. The ethical framework of the Officio Assassinorum is deliberately engineered to exclude empathy, relativism, or introspection. From the moment of recruitment, operatives are instructed that the value of life is measurable only by its contribution to the Imperium. A life that stands in opposition, whether knowingly or not, is a threat to stability. There is no trial, no debate, no appeals process. The assassin is not judge, jury, or executioner. They are the bullet, fired only when deemed necessary by those authorized to issue orders. This absence of ethical variance is maintained through routine psychological scans and reinforcement protocols. During downtime between missions, assassins are not permitted unsupervised activity. Their mental state is assessed through combat drills, thought monitoring software, and biometric analysis. Should any trace of emotional development be detected, immediate conditioning sessions are mandated. These sessions may involve memory redaction, dream suppression, or direct neural recalibration. The goal is to maintain a zero-variance psychological state, free of fear, guilt, and desire. The war machines employed by the Officio Assassinorum are few in number but unmatched in quality. Most are not battlefield vehicles but rather precision deployment systems. One such example is the Stalker Drop Pod, used by Vindicare agents for planetary insertion. Unlike standard Space Marine drop pods, these are designed for total silence and impact absorption. The pod buries itself several meters beneath surface terrain and deploys the assassin through a narrow tunnel equipped with terrain-adaptive camouflage. Another is the Exiliant Coffin, a deep vault casket used by Callidus and Eversor agents during long-range infiltration deployments. It operates as a stasis field, identity concealment array, and neural data sync device. The internal lining contains emotion null gels and interface pods for last-minute mission data uploads. It is not a comfort device, it is a coffin in every sense, designed to eliminate all stimuli except operational readiness. The rarest of these machines is the null entropy chamber, used exclusively for Culexus containment and deployment. These sealed pods are constructed using psychic null metal, mined from unknown sources, and reinforced with Mechanicus-verified Geller field mesh. The chamber does not merely block psychic detection, it erases all warp resonance within a 20-meter radius. Only the most dangerous operations involving demonic entities or rogue Alpha-class psychers warrant its use. Despite the advanced hardware and implants available, the Assassinorum has no interest in developing armies. Its philosophy is rooted in efficiency. One perfect kill outweighs 1,000 misfired bullets. This principle governs every decision, from recruitment to mission scale. The Officio does not operate through brute force. It operates through intent sharpened into flesh. Over time, the very concept of the Assassinorum has become a psychological tool. Its existence, whispered in corridors of power, functions as both deterrent and control. Rebellious governors, overambitious inquisitors, and heretical cults must constantly ask themselves whether their next step is already being watched. Even the loyal fear the idea of being considered a liability. This fear sustains order more effectively than any parade of tanks or orbital bombardment. The culture within the Assassinorum is not one of camaraderie. Operatives do not form bonds. They do not share stories or maintain personal records. Every assassin exists within a closed node of operational silence. They may train beside others, deploy in tandem or execute coordinated kills, but they do not form friendships. Their loyalty is to Terra, to duty, and to the silence that follows a successful mission. As Chapter 1 concludes, the Officio Assassinorum stands as a paradox, its agents engineered for violence, yet deployed in the name of order. Its methods are silent, but its impact echoes across millennia. It is not justice, nor is it vengeance. It is necessity given form, and that form is always watching. The earliest recorded appearance of the Officio Assassinorum in a formally documented administratum entry appears in the high-level intelligence logs of Millennia 31, during the waning years of the Great Crusade. Though not yet named, the concept of sanctioned, targeted elimination was already taking form. The pre-heresy Imperium, still centralised under the authority of the Emperor and his Primarchs, had limited need for covert elimination. However, isolated references appear in classified Munitorum field logs describing operatives capable of bypassing front lines to eliminate hostile warlords, rebel psychers, and traitor commanders in systems where full-scale conflict would have been too costly. And that form is always watching. These operatives were referred to only by classification codes, such as Asset Theta or Unit 311, and no temple affiliation is provided. Later retroactive analysis by the Ordo Redactus suggests these individuals may have been proto-assassins, precursors to the modern temples that would be formalized after the heresy. Their origin remains uncertain, though some documents hint at early collaboration with the Proto-Inquisition and the Emperor's own custodians in forming black operations teams, and that form is always watching. It was only after the Horus Heresy, specifically in the early decades of Millennia 32, that the Officio Assassinorum became a formally recognized Imperial institution. The earliest named record exists in the sealed Terra-based data vault known as Archive Sanctus 88B. This file details the Magnicide Protocols, a coordinated series of targeted killings conducted during the final stages of the Siege of Terra and the scouring of the remaining traitor-aligned planetary governors across Segmentum Solar. These operations, ordered directly by Malcador the Sigillite before his death, were executed by specialists believed to be the earliest operatives of what would become the Vindicare and Callidus temples, and that form is always watching. The Magnicide Protocols involved a network of infiltrators dispatched to several loyalist-claimed systems where sympathizers of the War Master still held authority. In each case, the governors were executed within days of the operation's initiation. A notable log references Operation Dust Shroud, where a Callidus agent posing as an astropath's aide successfully eliminated the arch-traitor magister Leo Khan in the Azurian Belt, ending an 8-month insurrection without a single guardsman deployed, and that form is always watching. Shortly after the completion of these protocols, the Officio Assassinorum was formally ratified by the High Lords of Terra under Article 24 of the Codex Administratum. The article gave birth to the bureaucratic scaffolding needed to classify, sanction, and execute excisions legally under Imperial law. The founding of the 4 primary temples occurred over the next 2 centuries, each institutionally separated and individually chartered to preserve doctrinal independence. Administratum records from Millennia 32 to Millennia 34 depict the Officio Assassinorum as an institution of extreme restraint. Deployment frequency was low, with only a few dozen excisions approved per century. Most targets were high-ranking planetary officials, rogue psychers, or traitorous nobles involved in seditious plots. Missions were reviewed by a tri-council composed of High Lord representatives from the Adeptus Terra, Astra Telepathica, and the early Ordo Hereticus. The reasoning behind this slow deployment was twofold. The psychological potency of even knowing an assassin existed often prevented rebellion, and the high operational cost of training and deploying an assassin meant the Imperium saw better returns using them sparingly. One of the earliest major assassinations widely discussed in sealed Munitorum war logs is the execution of Arch-Comptroller Vaughn Lascor on the planet Haldanar IV in Millennia 34, year 119. Lascor, a rogue bureaucrat within the Adeptus Administratum, had rerouted tithe resources toward a personal private army and begun seizing power across the Haldanar sector. Though loyalist regiments were dispatched, the Officio was given special clearance by the High Lords after a full planetary rebellion seemed imminent. A Vindicare agent was deployed and successfully eliminated Lascor during a public address, firing from a kilometre away using an atmospheric concealed micropod in the upper stratosphere. The shot passed through 3 layers of armoured glass, entered the comptroller's left eye socket, and exited his spine. Rebellion ceased within hours. Administratum documentation of these operations is intentionally clinical and minimal. Most files are designated as Penance Class, or Iron Level Suppressed, with access limited to Senatorum Imperialis analysts and select Inquisition personnel. In these logs, assassinations are not referred to as murders or kills, but as administrative conclusions. Targets are labelled compromised Imperial assets, and assassins are identified only by temple designation and operational timestamp. Throughout millennia 35 and 36, the Officio Assassinorum saw a spike in deployment following the destabilising effects of the Nova Terra interregnum. The political split between Terra and the breakaway realm of Nova Terra created a bureaucratic collapse in many systems, particularly in Segmentum Pacificus and Segmentum Obscurus. Internal documents show that over 300 assassination requests were filed during the first century of the Schism, with 68 being approved by the High Lords. Among the more publicised results was the removal of High Cardinal Tagilio's date, a known sympathiser of the Nova Terran faction, whose death on the steps of the ecclesiarchal palace on Brian's World helped shift local allegiances back to Terra. The Adeptus Administratum's formal records began including attached Mechanicus diagnostic logs around this time, offering greater insight into the cybernetic integrity and physiological statistics of each operative. One document, Report 088 Sigma from the Biologist Division, analysed a returning Eversor assassin and found that over 78% of the operative's musculature had been artificially enhanced using vat-grown fibres laced with carbon nanofilament. Neural scan reports appended to the same file recorded a resting aggression index of 9.8 out of 10, noting that the assassin remained semi-conscious during stasis. These diagnostics would later be used to develop newer biopurge protocols in later generations of Eversor deployment. By millennia 37, the Officio Assassinorum's actions were increasingly recognised as stabilising tools not just in wartime, but also in peacetime bureaucratic control. Administratum records began recording incidents such as institutional realignment orders, which were not traditional missions of elimination but targeted assassinations of individuals suspected of spreading unorthodox policy interpretations, particularly within the Departmentum Unitorum and Administratum subdivisions. These killings were performed with no formal charges filed or trials conducted. Instead, the individuals simply failed to report for work the next day, and all records of their employment were sealed or reassigned. The use of such tactics created widespread silence among dissenting policymakers and cemented the Assassinorum's utility beyond the battlefield. Notably, there was the case of Prefectus Crail Gino, the architect behind the selective remission doctrine, which sought to reallocate food tithes in favour of industrial supply lines, resulting in widespread famine on 27 agricultural worlds. After over 30 petitions to the High Lords were denied, an unsanctioned investigation by Administratum Intelligence concluded that Gino was siphoning surplus rations for private off-world sale through rogue Chartist captains. A request was filed through emergency quorum and approved under a special clause. A Callidus agent posing as his senior economic advisor poisoned him during a transit meeting. Geno's death was officially recorded as a data stress aneurysm. No assassination was ever admitted. By the end of millennia 38, the Adeptus Administratum began drafting special codexes to manage the Assassinorum's impact on macro policy planning. One such codex, designated Codex Silencio, was never publicly released but is referenced in numerous procedural memos. It established guidelines for requesting excisions without disrupting economic flow, faith cohesion, or regional chain of command logistics. The mere existence of this codex confirmed that the Officio Assassinorum had moved beyond an isolated tool of violence into a persistent structural element of imperial governance, used not only to extinguish threats, but to shape the direction of bureaucratic order across star systems. One of the earliest multi-theatre engagements involving the Officio Assassinorum is recorded in the Administratum War Annals of Millennia 36, year 284, during the Quintan reunification campaign. The planet Quintan, though a loyal Agra world, fell into chaos after a gene-encoded rogue administrator from the pre-heresy line of Sector Castellax resurfaced, claiming ancestral rights to the planetary tithe nexus. The planetary defense forces fractured, and negotiations with Segmentum Command failed. Rather than launch a full-scale reclamation campaign, which would have threatened food supply to 3 nearby Forge worlds, the High Lords issued a limited operation approval to the Assassinorum. A Callidus operative was inserted under the guise of a local agricultural diplomat and spent 2 months building influence before neutralizing the claimant and their inner circle during a peace summit. What made this mission notable in the Administratum's records was the chain effect that followed. 12 minor rebellions across the region collapsed immediately after the assassination, saving an estimated 100 billion thrones in potential deployment costs. The deployment report concluded that 1 vial of polymorphine was worth more than an entire fleet of warships under certain circumstances. During Millennia 37, Year 412, the Officio played a supporting role in the Xantrax Null Crusade, a Mechanicus-led reclamation of lost standard template constructs on the gas giant-turned-orbiting fortress of Xantrax. The Forge world had been overrun by a heretic cult that had installed orbital gravity hooks, creating a gravitational kill zone to destroy approaching fleets. After several failed attempts by Skitarii forces to disable the system, a Vindicare operative was inserted via orbital stealth pod, targeting the cult's gravitational core technician during a high-altitude atmospheric calibration. The Vindicare's shot disrupted the relay sequence just long enough for the Mechanicus fleet to deploy boarding pods. The Administratum's follow-up report noted this action as the first ever recorded sniper shot made during freefall entry, and cross-listed the kill as a gravity event assassination. The Dulthan reprisals, spanning the early 400s of Millennia 38, mark one of the few times multiple temples were deployed in coordinated fashion. The Dalthan segmentum had collapsed into civil war following a series of psychic storms and mass astropathic failures. The ruling Council of 12 fractured, and 3 planetary governments seceded from Imperial doctrine. Rather than risk a full segmentum-wide military campaign, the High Lords authorized a multi-temple excision series. Administratum battle logs confirm 4 assassins deployed simultaneously: 1 Callidus, 1 Eversor, 1 Vindicare, and 1 Culexus. Each had a specific task: decapitate command, disrupt military communications, eliminate psycho leadership, and destabilize morale. Over the span of 8 standard days, 8 primary targets were eliminated, with a reported collateral of fewer than 30 civilian casualties. In comparison, the same level of pacification via military means would have cost over 5 million Imperial Guardsmen and required 10 years of engagement. Administratum assessment following the event labelled the operation a theoretical demonstration of strategic micro-violence, and recommended similar operations in future civil breakdowns. Another significant campaign took place in Millennia 39, Year 903, known as the Mirian Plague Incursion. The hive world of Mirian had become a breeding ground for plague cults connected to Nurgle. Entire underhives were overrun, and planetary command was nearing collapse. The Astra Militarum was preparing for full planetary extermination. Before the Exterminatus could be approved, a Culexus agent was deployed under emergency quarantine parameters. Administratum records note the operative operated alone for 11 standard days, targeting psychonodes and warp-channeling cult leaders using a portable null field generator. Local forces reported that entire regions of the Underhive fell silent, cultists disbanded, and demonic manifestations dissipated within minutes of the agent's proximity. By the time the operative was recovered, resistance had dropped by 70%. No Exterminatus order was needed. The Officio Assassinorum was later credited in the sealed Administratum Appendix as having saved a hive world with a single deployment, a rare written commendation for the organisation. One of the most violent public incidents on record came during the Tarsan Supremacy Reclamation, late in Millennia 40. The Tarsan Combine, a minor human empire operating under a false compliance charter, was found to be hiding a Xenos-embedded command caste and refusing Imperial integration. After diplomatic channels failed and 3 rogue traders were killed, the High Lords issued a strategic decapitation order. Administratum records show that the Officio Assassinorum conducted a sequence kill operation. 7 Eversor assassins were simultaneously deployed across the sector, targeting orbital command, planetary governors, and private military assets. The planetary governments collapsed within 36 hours. Resistance turned into chaos, followed by immediate Imperial reoccupation. Due to the suddenness and scale of the operation, this event became known internally as the 36-hour war. An administratum estimation attached to the post-mission analysis calculated that the operation cost just under 400 million thrones, significantly less than the projected 2 trillion thrones for full segmentum reconquest. The Officio Assassinorum also played a hidden yet crucial role during the Gog Vandiri reign of blood in Millennia 36. While the ecclesiarchy and the nascent Sisters of Battle dominated the historical spotlight, Administratum kill logs confirm the presence of at least 3 Vindicare assassins operating under an undeclared excision protocol. These agents were tasked not with killing Vandire, but eliminating key enablers, his data servants, signal officers, and psychic screers responsible for message control across the segmentum solar. These quiet eliminations helped fragment Vandire's information network and contributed to the psychological breakdown of his chain of command before his final confrontation with Alicia Dominica. These entries remained redacted until re-reviewed during the segmentum audit following the Age of Apostasy. In the Vornak civil purge of Millennia 41, year 106, the Officio was once again deployed to prevent a Forge World uprising from spilling into Segmentum Ultima. Forge Vornak had begun refusing Mechanicus command orders and withholding tithe shipments. The Fabricator Lord had developed unsanctioned machine intelligences and established a private Skitarii force. While the Adeptus Mechanicus debated internally, a covert appeal was made to the Officio Assassinorum. An internal approval was fast-tracked, and a Callidus agent was dispatched disguised as a Magos cleric. Within 1 week, the Fabricator Lord and his 4 successors were found dead inside a sealed, encrypted laboratory. No breach was recorded, and security logs showed only static during the incident window. The Mechanicus submitted an official report listing the cause of death as atmospheric failure, but attached a private data tag to the High Lords confirming assassin involvement. The administrator marked the incident as a non-invasion sector restoration, and filed it under the zero-casualty reassertion category. Finally, the purgation of Kelissa Minor, a minor Forge world corrupted by Tzinch cultists, presented one of the rare documented failures. In Millennia 41, year 756, a Culexus assassin was sent to neutralize the Psyker nodes, responsible for stabilizing an ongoing warp storm. However, cultists had reverse-engineered stolen Mechanicus tech and constructed counter-null fields that interfered with the operative's suppression radius. The assassin was killed, and their remains were used to fuel a ritual demon summoning. This marked one of the few known defeats of the Officio Assassinorum, and the Administratum's review board classified it as a containment failure. The Forge world was later destroyed through Exterminatus. Despite the loss, the post-incident analysis still credited the assassin for disrupting the ritual long enough to delay the storm's climax, allowing evacuation of over 9 million Imperial citizens. Through all these engagements, the theme remains constant. The Assassinorum operates with a surgical presence and disproportionate impact. The Administratum rarely lists them by name, always by action. In public records, they are labelled as factors, not individuals. The file might say, causal collapse of resistance, or preemptive neutralization, resulting in structural realignment, but the true meaning is always the same. Someone was removed, and the Imperium continued. Throughout its long service to the Imperium, the Officio Assassinorum has increasingly become not just a battlefield asset, but a fully integrated component of Imperial policy enforcement. The Adeptus Administratum, while never the direct authority over the temples, has recorded in detail how these operatives shaped not only conflicts, but economics, compliance, and system-wide political behaviour. By Millennia 41, the Officio Assassinorum had executed over 9,000 classified deployments, according to a cumulative summary embedded within the Strategic Threat Resolution Index, a restricted administratum codex updated once every century. These deployments include high-value political removals, psychic threat terminations, and preemptive actions designed to eliminate rising figures viewed as dangerous to segmentum cohesion. The Assassinorum is not tasked with justification, only outcome, but the Administratum is tasked with documenting those outcomes, and those reports paint a clear, calculated evolution of purpose. The earliest major shift in policy-based use came during the Second Golden System insurrection, Millennia 37. After traditional military forces repeatedly failed to subdue rebellion among the outer Administratum tithe guilds, the High Lords authorised a multi-year campaign of silent removals. This began a trend that would grow over the next 4,000 years. Not every rebellion had to be extinguished in flames. Sometimes it could be collapsed by killing 4 men in silence and letting paranoia finish the job. Administratum records note that assassinations often outlast their missions. The psychological effects of a precise excision cause command structures to fracture, replacements to doubt their security, and entire guilds to turn on one another under suspicion. A compiled report from Millennia 39, Year 702, revealed that 23 separate planetary rebellions were halted not through force, but through 1 to 3 well-timed eliminations paired with fabricated evidence suggesting internal betrayal. In each case, Imperial rule was re-established within 1 standard month, with no deployment of Astra Militarum units. As the decades passed, the cost-benefit analysis of Officio deployment became a topic of frequent internal debate across various departments, munitorum and planetary oversight councils. Deploying a single Vindicare agent could cost upwards of 4 million thrones, including insertion, equipment, data wipe, and recovery. However, one such deployment might prevent a war projected to cost several billion thrones in logistics and millions of lives in troop losses. The economic modelling created in response led to the creation of excision threshold guidelines, an internal administratum formula used to determine when assassination was preferable to warfare. These guidelines were never made public, but became standard tools of High Lord strategists and inquisitorial councils. In these formulas, variables included tithe revenue risk, faith stability, astropathic traffic density, number of noble houses affected, and even projected public reaction times. An entry labelled Case Gamma 8, Felix Null, calculated that the removal of 1 heretic planetary governor in the Felix subsector would save 4 full regiments of Astra Militarum, keep the planetary tithe schedule on track, and reduce the spread of dissident creed materials by over 90%. The assassination was approved. The governor was killed during his morning briefing with no external breach logged. The result was a net loss of 0 military personnel and total planetary compliance within 2 weeks. Despite its success, the Assassinorum's expanding scope also generated discomfort within the Administratum. By the time of Millennia 40, certain regional overseers began to express concern about what they called excessive precision dependency. This phrase appears in a series of internal memos expressing worry that overuse of assassination was slowly reducing Imperial adaptability. Governors began relying on the threat of Officio involvement as a first line of control, reducing investment in local intelligence networks and neglecting long-term civic compliance infrastructure. One record from the Segmentum Tempestus Stability Review, Millennia 40, Year 812, references this problem directly. The author, Master Logister Devrin Gall, writes, "We are not merely removing weeds, but uprooting the soil around them. If we continue to treat assassination as primary rather than corrective, the body politic will forget how to clot naturally." Despite these warnings, no official policy limiting Officio deployment was ever instituted. Instead, the practice became increasingly compartmentalized. Requests continued, but fewer were openly acknowledged. The Assassinorum was also increasingly involved in non-lethal operations, a category rarely discussed in public documentation. Administratum logs from Millennia 41 record operations in which Callidus agents were inserted to impersonate figures of political or religious authority temporarily, issuing orders or influencing command decisions before vanishing. These operations, labelled under the Influence Without Casualty protocol, were used to pivot planetary allegiances without force. While riskier than standard assassination, they offered more sustainable outcomes in regions plagued by prolonged ideological division. One example includes Operation Glimmer Truth, where a Callidus agent assumed the identity of a deceased preacher and delivered a planetary-wide sermon reinforcing compliance with the Imperial Creed. The target world, formerly on the brink of secession, realigned its ecclesiastical policies and resumed full tithe contribution within 3 months. The agent's presence was never discovered, and the real preacher's death was classified as martyrdom. The Assassinorum's logistical chain is, in many ways, more complex than a standard war fleet. Each deployment must be coordinated with astropathic blackout zones, Mechanicus refit and recalibration schedules, inquisitorial mission overlaps, and planetary orbit timings. In the Mechanicus integration logs, there is evidence that even the delivery capsules for Vindicare and Eversor agents required multiple Forge World sign-offs to ensure compatibility with atmospheric density and gravitic distortion patterns. Some assassination pods contain onboard cogitators capable of adjusting flight trajectory milliseconds before impact based on local climate telemetry. Agents are deployed only once their psychological and biological profiles match the mission's estimated survival curve. Administratum trend reviews show that fewer than 5% of assassins deployed after year 200 of Millennia 41 ever returned to their temples. Return was never the objective. Completion was. Yet the long view of Administratum analysts considered even a single successful mission worth the generational cost of training and material loss. Over time, the Assassinorum became embedded in language itself. Administratum lexicons began using terms like excision approved as shorthand for termination. Political review boards began referring to assassin thresholds when evaluating policy dissent. Even in internal meetings, the presence of a black-clad individual near the council halls would cause subtle shifts in tone, pace, and compliance from officials, despite no formal introductions being made. Fear, as always, was policy. Statistical review segments from the Segmentum Solar Death Index indicate that in the final century of Millennia 41, assassinations were responsible for the prevention of at least 19 civil wars, the silencing of 7 heretic conclaves, and the derailment of a nascent chaos cult presence on Holy Terra itself. The records for that last entry remain sealed, but multiple adjacent files reference psychic nullification traces and unregistered surveillance patterns within the upper Administratum stacks. It is clear, even within the neutral logs of the Administratum, that the Officio Assassinorum is not merely a tool of war, but a living weapon of strategy, deployed as both scalpel and symbol, whether silencing rebellion, guiding policy, or balancing the scales of high-level politics. The assassin's presence has left a measurable impact on Imperial stability. Their name is rarely spoken, their missions never publicly confirmed, yet every sealed file, every vanished name, and every redirected rebellion points to one unmistakable truth. In the cold calculus of the Imperium, silence is sometimes louder than war. The first mention of the Officio Assassinorum in the Inquisition's archives is not a commendation, it is a complaint. A recovered communication from Inquisitor Halbrenth of the Order Hereticus, dated Millennia 32, year 091, accuses an unidentified agent of sabotaging a live heresy investigation on the moon of Feros Ultima. According to Halbrenth's entry, the Inquisition had been tracking a chaos cult embedded within a local noble house, preparing a coordinated purge involving 3 teams and psyker support. Without warning, an Officio assassin entered the estate, eliminated the primary cult leader and 2 suspected heirs, then vanished. The ensuing power vacuum ignited a succession war that destroyed critical data caches the Inquisition had spent 6 years gathering. The Inquisition's own commentary labelled the incident as uncoordinated interference. The assassin was never named. The implication, however, was clear. The Officio acted outside operational integration, and its judgment had broader unintended consequences. From this point onward, the Inquisition began maintaining its own shadow archive on all known Officio operations, not for audit but for monitoring. Throughout the centuries that followed, the relationship between the Inquisition and the Officio Assassinorum remained tense, defined by limited collaboration, mutual utility, and deep suspicion. The Officio, for its part, maintained strict independence. It reported only to the High Lords of Terra, while the Inquisition reported to no one. The result was predictable. Dozens of operations across the millennia overlapped, often without communication, leading to several recorded instances of accidental or deliberate conflict between operatives. One early incident in Millennia 34 involved an Order Malleus kill team, tracking a minor demon host in the sub-void stations of Calthrex Nebula. Without warning, a Culexus operative appeared during the exorcism rites and executed both the demon host and the summoner in a split-second null pulse. The Inquisitorial squad, unaware of the operative's presence, opened fire on the Culexus agent, resulting in 2 fatalities before the assassin withdrew. A follow-up log suggests the Officio intentionally withheld its deployment to prevent the Inquisition from halting the assassination for intelligence gathering. The agent's actions were deemed tactically correct, but strategically detrimental. The demon host's warp-binding glyphs, crucial for decoding a broader demonic infiltration, were destroyed in the null blast. The assassin succeeded in execution. The Inquisition lost 2 years of research. Such incidents were not isolated. A report from Millennia 36, year 803, known internally as Case Corvid Glass, details an Ordo Xenos operation targeting a Xenos mimic infestation on the Forge refinery of Carnus 9. The Officio Assassinorum deployed a Callidus agent independently, resulting in a total mimic kill count that exceeded projections. But the agent also murdered 4 Imperial citizens incorrectly suspected of infection. The Inquisition considered these kills unjustified and opened a direct inquest into the Temple's selection algorithm. In the aftermath, a sealed session between the Ordo Xenos and the Assassinorum representative occurred aboard the Black Vault platform in orbit above Terra. The outcome of that meeting remains classified, but shortly after, the Officio Assassinorum altered its internal mission review process. Future Temple agents were required to submit post-kill psychological data pulses to inquisitorial relay nodes under certain regional protocols. While this did not give the Inquisition control, it offered trace visibility. The Assassinorum conceded not out of obedience but to avoid further escalation. Despite the tension, the Inquisition has also utilized the Assassinorum extensively in black operations, particularly in cases where public confrontation was impossible. One such example, referenced only as Directive Embervault, involved the assassination of an entire ruling council on the shrine world of Delphinus Prime, who had been compromised by a warp entity masquerading as a minor saint. The Inquisition, fearing mass panic and theological crisis, covertly requested the deployment of 3 Vindicare agents to eliminate all members during a live ceremonial broadcast. The shots were fired in perfect unison, creating the illusion of an astropathic overload. No investigation was launched. The population accepted the explanation. The saint's cult was dismantled. Order was preserved. These operations, while effective, also established an unwritten dependency between the Ordos and the Assassinorum, one that slowly eroded the traditional autonomy of both factions. From Millennia 37 onward, more than 60 joint actions are recorded under the Grey Mandate Protocol, a sealed doctrine allowing high-ranking Inquisitors to request assassin deployment directly through Inquisition channels rather than through the High Lords. While technically illegal under standard Officio protocol, many Temple Masters complied, especially when the requests aligned with their own threat projections. The Inquisition also observed something the Administratum either ignored or concealed. The failure rate of assassins in psycho-heavy zones was climbing. In multiple records, including the Atrexis Rifts Disruption Report and the Severin Gulf Null Excision Memo, Inquisitors detailed increased behavioral instability in Culexus agents, and neural spike failures in Callidus operatives exposed to overlapping warp resonance. One Ordo Malleus Psyker described a Vindicare agent as missing time during a mission on Karun's Bane, only to later learn the agent had been seen moving in 2 directions simultaneously. The Ordo Malleus began suspecting that long-term exposure to warp-adjacent missions, especially against rogue psychers or demons, was warping the mental structure of even genetically stabilized assassins. While the Assassinorum maintained that this was due to faulty inquisitorial intelligence, internal Inquisition files include notes of post-mission fragments recovered from fallen assassins that referenced impossible geometries, non-linear time perception, and names of entities not listed in any demonic lexicon. From these clues, the Inquisition began compiling the Silent Degradation Index, a hidden codex of suspected assassin exposure to unrecoverable psychic damage. This index was never shared with the Assassinorum. It remains under the exclusive control of a rotating council within the Ordo Malleus, and is believed to have influenced several vetoes of joint operation requests. More troubling still are the whispered references to a classified doctrine buried in Ordo Hereticus deep vaults. Kill Order Omega, a contingency plan for terminating assassins who become compromised, go rogue, or deviate from psychological baseline mid-mission. This file includes protocols for psychic detection, backup deployment, and immediate asset containment through surgical strikes. Notably, it also lists approved kills on Assassinorum masters, suggesting the Inquisition considered the possibility of internal temple corruption or strategic overreach. While there are no confirmed executions under this doctrine, at least one temple facility, a Vindicare substation on Eridu 9, was reported destroyed under ambiguous circumstances shortly after the execution of a planetary inquisitor. The Assassinorum has never acknowledged this doctrine, but multiple inquisitorial field logs use phrases like Stinger option prepared and Omega contingency possible, suggesting that even when the assassin is deployed, the Inquisition often prepares a countermeasure. The hunter, after all, may one day become the threat. Yet, through all these entanglements, the Inquisition continues to request assassins when the need arises. The temptation is simply too great. No matter how dangerous, no matter how unpredictable, the Officio Assassinorum remains the most effective solution to threats that cannot be seen, cannot be judged, and cannot be forgiven. For all their mutual distrust, the Inquisition and the Assassinorum continue to orbit each other, each believing they are the final safeguard of the Imperium, each knowing the other could destroy them if allowed too much leash. The Inquisition's deeper files begin to reveal a disconcerting trend. The Officio Assassinorum doesn't always follow orders to the letter, and in rare but repeatable cases seems to act without any verifiable order at all. These anomalies are first noted not in failed operations but in duplicate deployments. An internal report from Inquisitor Brannock Vole of the Ordo Xenos, filed during Millennia 40, details an assassination of a planetary Xenotech scholar named Gallius Herin on the Forge World Synthral Magna. The execution was clean, surgical, and performed with Vindicare precision. The problem was that 2 kill orders had been filed, one from the Inquisition, another from the Assassinorum's own high command within 3 hours of each other. Both orders referenced the same intelligence package. Both were signed by different parties, but neither side had shared data prior to the kill. After comparing timestamps, it was determined that the Assassinorum had already deployed the operative before the Inquisition finished approving its own authorization. No Temple Master would confirm how or why the Officio had accessed the same target data so quickly. The implication was clear. The Assassinorum was reading Inquisition traffic without clearance. A follow-up audit by the Ordo Hereticus discovered 3 more operations in the same century with mirrored patterns. Officio agents arriving at targets before inquisitorial teams could, acting with no coordination, and vanishing with no after-action logs. In these cases, the Inquisition was left with only fragments, ballistic residue, trace polymorphine compounds, and partial void jump signatures. Some began to suspect that the Officio Assassinorum possessed an internal intelligence division not declared in any official record, a predictive analytics network capable of independently forecasting which individuals would be marked for death and acting in advance. The Inquisition labelled this theory pre-directive execution patterning. In other words, the Assassinorum might not just wait for permission, it might kill before it's asked, based on a logic model only it understands. This hypothesis gained further traction with the discovery of the Cauldron Loop case in Millennia 41. A Callidus operative was recovered dead aboard a penal transit ship orbiting the world Cauldron Septimus, having failed to complete an assassination of a rogue astropath named Cyril Yand. The agent's internal memory augments, extracted by Ordo Malleus tech priests, revealed something troubling. The operative had received incomplete mission parameters and only partial target identifiers. The neural brief had missing subroutines, implying either sabotage from within the temple or an experiment. An attached memo speculated that the agent may have been deployed as a test, her success and improvisation being the true metrics. The idea of using trained assassins in live, partially informed scenarios without telling them sparked alarm within the Ordos. Such practices bordered on post-human exploitation and suggested a temple doctrine that saw even its own agents as data points to refine future performance. The trail grows darker with the Hezkron disjunction incident, a file sealed under triple code authorization. According to Inquisitor Sabrek Orin of the Ordo Malleus, during an inspection of a fortified archive on Hezkron 4, a Culexus agent entered without summons and proceeded to execute a latent psyker working in the Delta Vaults as a minor scribe. The Inquisition had not flagged the scribe for investigation. There was no psychic disturbance on record, no symptoms. The agent offered no explanation and refused all interrogation. Internal scans revealed that the scribe's genetic markers contained a fragment of a pre-heresy astropath genome, something the Officio Assassinorum had apparently tracked without revealing to any agency. The implications spiraled quickly. How long had the Assassinorum been running genetic scanning subroutines across the Imperium? Who gave that order? Were they building private watch lists, deciding unilaterally who constituted future threat vectors based on lineage, not action? The Inquisition began classifying such potential behavior under the working label Prospective Threat Elimination Doctrine. This theory, that the Assassinorum might act based on what someone could become, not who they currently are, divided the Ordos. Some viewed it as logical, others saw it as heretical. One cannot prosecute thought crime in the Imperium without sanction. The Assassinorum, it seemed, could. Further paranoia ignited when scattered data caches across the Segmentum Solar revealed traces of multiple Callidus infiltration events across ecclesiarchal and noble houses in the same decade, with no corresponding kill orders filed anywhere. The agents didn't strike, they just embedded, for years. In some cases they assumed the identity of low-ranking aides or couriers. In one case, a noble house advisor was revealed, after her sudden disappearance, to have been a Callidus operative active for 23 years. No assassination took place, no target died. But during her tenure, 4 policy shifts occurred, all of which steered local tithes, ecclesiarchal favour, and judicial appointments toward stricter, more pro-Terran alignment. There was no blood, no violence, just influence. The Inquisition, in its internal commentary, dubbed this kind of silent infiltration assassination without casualty. The assassin becomes not the executioner, but the advisor, the whisper, the lever that shifts the fulcrum of power quietly beneath layers of civility. It is in this category that the Inquisition's real anxiety crystallized, not in violence, but in the lack of oversight. The Assassinorum operates with clean logic: identify threat, apply solution, vanish. But the definition of a threat and the choice of solution seems increasingly internalized. The temples no longer act merely as weapons wielded by the High Lords. Some appear to be selecting their own missions, running unapproved interventions, and embedding across power structures with no bloodshed, no documentation, and no accountability. A disturbing phrase appears in the margins of several reports from Ordo Hereticus field analysts. What if the Officio Assassinorum is no longer just ending threats? What if it's guiding the Imperium? This notion, once considered absurd, gained traction after the Kursk intercession suppression, in which a high-ranking cardinal was assassinated following multiple failed excommunication attempts. The target, though proven guilty of heresy, had successfully used bureaucracy to avoid trial. No kill order had been approved. No Inquisition request was active, and yet the cardinal was executed perfectly in his private sanctuary. The bolt's trajectory matched Vindicare signature patterning, but the temple denied the deployment. The Inquisition found no active mission file. There was no agent to question. The only trace was a sealed letter left behind, addressed to no one, containing a single sentence: "Judgment proceeds, regardless of permission." The implications were chilling. Either someone had forged Vindicare methods so perfectly it fooled every detection layer, or the Assassinorum itself had acted without ever logging the act. The Officio Assassinorum is feared because it can end anyone, but in these hidden inquisitorial files, it is feared for something far worse, because it might choose. By the final centuries of Millennia 41, Inquisition observers began compiling long-form trend analyses regarding the Officio Assassinorum. These documents were not authorized requests or kill reports, but quiet retrospectives, assessments of behavioral patterns, increasing strategic autonomy, and incidents that fell outside of declared temple doctrine. Most of these were drafted without formal approval. Their findings remain sealed within encrypted Ordo archives, often segmented between multiple sub-inquisitorial cells. The conclusions were considered too volatile to circulate widely. The first point noted across all Ordo branches was consistency of outcome. Regardless of deployment location, target classification, or temple assigned, the Officio Assassinorum maintained an execution rate exceeding 98%. While this made it the most reliable kill asset in the Imperium, it also raised concern among internal auditors. A report filed within the Ordo Hereticus under the title Autonomy Stability Projections questioned whether the temples had begun to pre-filter potential missions before deployment, selecting only those with high statistical success rates. This would have implications on how many threats were not acted upon, those deemed outside acceptable predictive tolerances. Inquisitorial analysts proposed the existence of an internal triage protocol used by the Temple Masters, potentially driven by automated forecasting systems. These algorithms may have influenced mission selection without full input from the High Lords or the Inquisition, resulting in what was termed selective nullification doctrine. In other words, assassinations were no longer being approved reactively, but curated proactively through parameters the Inquisition had no access to. The second point of concern centered on agent longevity and operational gaps. Most temples, by design, do not retain returning operatives, yet some black file records include repeated appearances of agents bearing similar genetic markers, identical behavioral profiles, and matching mission styles across multiple centuries. Whether these agents are clones, data-based reconstructions, or enhanced survivals remains unclear. What is clear is that some of these repeat cases appeared outside of documented deployment logs, suggesting unauthorized return deployments or autonomous reactivation cycles. One Ordo Malleus case report titled Shadow Persistence Phenomenon includes details of an Eversor-class agent that reportedly self-recovered after failed mission completion on the world Marnix Delin. Local scans indicated no pickup orders were issued. The body was not retrieved. Yet, 2 decades later, an identical Eversor model executed an unrelated target on a neighbouring system, again without linked deployment data. Surveillance records confirmed identical neural scarring and augmetic configurations. The Inquisition raised the possibility of independent recovery protocols embedded within certain temple classes. Further irregularities were documented in the form of non-lethal interventions that bore all the hallmarks of Assassinorum methods. One such file, maintained under the Ordo Xenos, examined a political realignment on the ecclesiarchal world of Carothex, where 6 high-ranking clergy members shifted position simultaneously during a conclave vote. No violence occurred. However, biometric records revealed exposure to trace compounds used in Callidus infiltration training. Surveillance footage identified facial inconsistencies in one advisor figure, but no confrontation followed. The ecclesiarchal decision preserved Imperial tithe law in the region, but no record of Assassinorum involvement was found. The report concluded with the phrase, "Policy adjustment via silent impersonation confirmed, target remains alive, outcome stable, motive unknown." From this and similar cases, the Inquisition proposed the theory of long-term political embedding, operations where Callidus agents replace low-level bureaucrats, clerks or advisors not to assassinate, but to shape governance gradually. The ultimate objective remains speculative. In a separate incident on the Forge world Delnavar, a minor civil uprising was halted after the unexplained disappearance of 4 agitator leaders. Local Arbites registered no arrests. Military assets were not deployed. However, coded transmissions later recovered from Mechanicus audit logs referenced an unauthorized drop capsule signature in the region hours before the disappearances. The trajectory matched Vindicare-style launch systems. No confirmation of kill order exists in Imperial records. The Inquisition designated this an unattributed strategic quieting. The broader concern was not the loss of agitators, but the lack of traceable motive or oversight. If the Temple removed these targets, it did so without instruction. If another party acted using Assassinorum methods, it demonstrated technological parity with the Temples themselves, an outcome deemed highly improbable. Further encrypted commentary across the Ordo Hereticus network suggests increasing friction between Temple protocols and inquisitorial oversight, particularly in missions involving psychers, mutants, and heretic sympathizers. In multiple reports, Inquisitors began noting discrepancies between authorized kill lists and actual termination patterns. Some individuals marked for execution remained alive, while unrelated targets were eliminated. In response, the Hereticus subcell on Scintilla drafted a report titled Dissonance Pattern Recognition, Officio Deviations. This document proposed a foundational shift within the Officio Assassinorum, suggesting that some missions were not being executed according to external priority, but internal criteria derived from unknown logic structures. In short, the Temple was acting on a threat model not shared with its supposed commanders. The final conclusions across these black archives were not uniform. Some Inquisitors viewed the Officio Assassinorum as a necessary extremity, dangerous, unpredictable, but vital. Others saw it as a failed experiment in hyperloyalty, no longer answerable to any branch of the Imperium. One Ordo Malleus codifier, unnamed in the record, summarized the matter with the following remark: "We built them to end threats. We did not define who decides what a threat is." Ultimately, the Inquisition does not issue a universal judgment against the Assassinorum. Instead, it continues to monitor, document, and in rare cases, attempt to interfere. But interference carries risk. The Temple has never forgotten an Inquisitor who attempted to curtail its influence. Several are known to have vanished. A few reappeared days later, alive, uninjured, and silent. They issued no further challenges. Across Terra and the Segmentum archives, the final files on the Officio Assassinorum remain sealed by default, not out of security protocol, but out of collective hesitation. The temples still function, targets still fall. Peace, in its fractured form, is maintained. And so, despite every unanswered question, the Imperium allows the Officio Assassinorum to persist, an institution buried too deep to uproot and too useful to remove. In the absence of truth, the blade still falls, and no one speaks its name.